joyous with smiles on our faces.
Welcome, guys. Welcome. This is our brand new podcast show called Question Everything.
So excited.
So excited. I am very excited. So what are we questioning?
Everything.
Everything. Yeah. So, question everything. What does that mean? It means that Cody and I, when we got together and decided that we wanted a platform to try and inspire others with our experience and the few tidbits of knowledge we've been able to pick up that have helped us in developing from the inside out, we want to share this stuff with you guys. And so we wanted this platform. For me, if one person, every time we jump on here, takes one thing we say and uses it and it makes them feel better, and then they come back and maybe they get a second piece and that helps them again and they can start to feel better for themselves and then they pay that forward.
That's all we can ask for.
That's all I care about.
Because we know how far that ripple effect goes, right? Oh, man.
Real talk. Fire chat.
Fire chat.
So with that, episode 1, we're calling this one, Everyone Starts Somewhere.
Everyone starts somewhere.
Wow. It's so true.
It is. I mean, you know, that first dawned on me when I first started lifting weights, right? You go in there and you're like, oh, I can only lift the bar. And you're seeing the guy next to you putting all these 45-pound plates on. Your coach says, hey, he started with just the bar too. Everybody starts somewhere.
So true. And it's kind of odd that you use the human body as the example to illustrate that point because you cannot fake a body that's well tuned.
That's true. There's no hiding that.
There's no, it takes so much dedication.
It does.
Before you see those kind of results to where you're feeling those aesthetics, you're seeing those aesthetics.
100%.
And just like I feel our insides go.
100, and Greg, you nailed it right on the head because you're right. You can't hide the body, right? But what do we do all the time? We hide the emotional part inside. How many people have a fake smile when they wake up in the morning, but is that really how you feel? And that's kind of what inspires us to do this podcast because we've been there, man.
We certainly have. I mean, look, I got to a place in life where I had the life that looked like I had everything. I woke up in my super nice pad. I took my 4 or 5 minute drive from garage to garage over to the mortgage office, right? And worked my 12 hours or whatever it was. And I came home and, you know, there's lots of marijuana and substance abuse in there and just to numb.
Yeah.
Because, like you were saying, is that smile real or is it put on? It was like, I have this life full of money, full of girls, full of nice things. But the thing about things is, the law of diminishing returns is very real.
Well, I was going to say, Jay, let's go back. Where did it all start? I mean, tell me where it all began for you, my friend.
So I was born here in Phoenix, Arizona. My dad is from Uganda, which is in Africa. My mom is from Tanzania, which is also in Africa. And they met in London, England. Now, their story is pretty enchanting, actually, because my father's mother in London has a sister who lives next door to my mom's family in Tanzania.
No way.
This is how they made their connection.
The world's not that small, is it?
It super is, Cody, because guess what happened? My dad sees my mom in London, finally away from her brother's grasp, because they would just literally send dudes to the hospital that would even try and hit on my mom. They'd fly over counters and they're like Supermaning dudes. They're like, get away from my sister.
Okay.
You're like, okay.
I can kind of understand, but that's pretty,
That's pretty intense. Pretty intense. So finally my dad sees her in London, England. She's hanging out with her cousin, who is already one of my dad's good friends. So there's this whole web of relations that made it all happen.
It's
But
almost like it was meant to be.
it seems like it was meant to be. I certainly don't believe in chance.
Yeah.
I don't believe in coincidence. I think everything happens for a reason.
Me too.
Even very recently, I've seen some crazy situations like, for example, my dad was telling me yesterday that Ringo Starr was meant to be in Led Zeppelin.
Really?
I'm going to have to fact check this. But if he had been accepted into that band, he would have never been a Beatle.
Wow. Think about that.
Potentially.
Right.
Perhaps if maybe Led Zeppelin breaks
Different.
up, this or that, he leaves, whatever, but...
Different path, though.
Right?
Yeah.
That couldn't happen because this had to happen.
Exactly. Right.
9 times out of 10, maybe if he, had his Weetabix properly that morning, British, or the Viennetta ice cream the night before, but it didn't because it was all meant to happen that way. Now, for me, I believe every decision, every motion that was put into motion my whole life got me here.
100%.
Without those experiences, I wouldn't feel like I have something to share.
Right. Yep.
And so for me, it all began as a kid. My parents owned a dry cleaners.
Okay.
They were brand new to the business when I was just born. And my mom's brothers were already here, 2 of them. Successful dry cleaning operation. My parents came and fit in. Right? Visa sponsors and everything was just part of that. Now, they were running a family business together as partners without very many contracts. That's stressful. They were constantly working.
Okay.
So, as I was getting older, a few effects that had, and I will say this, they did not love what they were doing, for sure. But that resulted in a less than satisfactory diet. It resulted in a less than satisfactory level of physical activity. The friends circle and the positive activities that we were engaging in were non-existent in the beginning.
That makes sense.
Because work consumed all of the time and energy, right? Flash forward. So now I am 8, 9 years old. We moved down here to the east side, and I am in school. However, after school, I'm also getting picked up and going to the cleaners. I'm physically, have you seen those big bins at dry cleaners where they put your clothes in the bag and then they toss it into this bin of ton of other bags?
Yep.
And then they process through those?
Uh-huh.
Well, I would sleep in the vacant bin.
Oh, really?
Because that's how much my parents were working.
Oh, okay. Wow.
My lunch was frequently the Chicken McNuggets Happy Meal. Just a side note, chicken is never shaped like boots.
Yeah, good point.
That's how not natural that stuff is. But it's okay because the breading just, yeah.
It makes it work.
Right. You never know. So, anyways. So there's that. So then my parents decide, okay, a little physical activity for this guy would be good. So they put me in karate.
Okay.
That was the first positive influence in my life, I believe. Much like your story, which we'll get to, the team environment and having these mentors and people who needed my help to increase their skills, the people I needed to learn from to increase the skills, the coaches, the tournaments, the camaraderie, all of that, it really resonated for me.
And Jay, how did you feel as a kid? So, I'm hearing your parents worked really hard, to support and put the food on the table, and you were always at the dry cleaners, right? How did that make you feel? What did you feel like at that time?
I don't believe that I was aware enough of my feelings at that time. And I believe that came from my parents not really knowing. See, they got married at a very young age, and I don't believe they were fully developed. So it was like two teenagers raising an infant.
Wow.
They did what they had to do, and I'm grateful.
It's a profound statement because that is so common, but if you really think about what you just said, it's pretty amazing.
There's a roadmap that now, flash forward years later, I believe I have realized there are certain areas that we have to grow in order to become not only contributing members of society, but well before that can even be in the picture, where we can self-love and direct our own thoughts and actions to where they need to be so that we can be of any value to those around us.
Preach, brother.
And
Preach.
unfortunately, when parents have a kid young and they haven't done that work, how can they pass that on?
Great point.
You can't pass on what you don't have.
100%. You're right.
Right? So that's where I believe my humble beginnings are in my story. Flash forward, I'm in high school. I'm running my dad's cleaners. I'm opening it in the morning. I'm going to school. Tennis after school. Again, the team environment, which was always something positive. And during those high school years, I finally started to care about my physical shape. And I finally started to realize that when you focus on taking care of your body and looking good, the exercise produces a byproduct of looking good,
Right.
which helps you feel good. And then once you feel good, you feel like doing more work to feel even better. And then all of those chemical reactions that happen inside of us when we start to feel like we look better and we're prouder of the person we see in the mirror, we do better. So this was when look good, feel good, do good finally became something that in my life I feel to this day has so much truth and application.
Compounding effects.
Yeah, it's everything. It's
Right.
mind, body, and spirit. And that's why I wanted to do this show. Because even after high school, through my 20s, when I was just chasing money, I spent my 20s chasing money. I mean, I was 20 years old, 21 years old in the finance, making great money, partying my ass off, and did not take a look at myself again until I was about 26, 27.
Okay. Yeah, it's close to the same for me. Yeah.
Right? And at that time I realized, I said, okay, I've got a cushy job. I have a lot of things on the outside that would seemingly provide the life that people work their whole lives to try and attain.
Right.
But I don't feel like I have anything.
Oh, wow.
I'm going out every weekend and numbing myself, spending hundreds of dollars on drinking and doing drugs just to forget about what those 60 hours or 70 hours of work were like.
Right, right.
I'm at work making plans.
Just to get ready for the next Monday, right?
Right.
Yeah, right.
That's not an existence to me.
No.
Now I believe I have gotten a few truths since that time because I knew something had to change. So here was my big takeaway. Here's how I knew that something had to change. I know for me that if I'm working, say, 60 hours a week, whatever it is, doesn't matter how many hours it is, but a considerable amount of time every week, right? I should feel, and I'm going to question that word should in our vocabulary in a second, but I should say, I need the time that I spend on things to feel fulfilling.
Oh, yeah.
This was my first realization. How is it that I can spend all that time doing that, but all I'm getting out of it is time being spent? Does that make sense?
That's a profound realization.
Because every Friday at noon, 1 o'clock, I was thinking about how do I get out of here quicker
Right.
so that I can go start drinking and numbing.
Yep.
And it was like they call what? A weekend warrior.
Yep.
That was
Yep.
all that I cared about, was going out on the weekend.
It's a vicious cycle.
It is a vicious cycle. And it just continued like that for years on end. I mean, this was at least a few years.
Oh, yeah.
Before I woke up and I said, dude, are you really okay with getting to your let's say 40 years old, for example's sake? If I was 40 years old and I woke up and I was still in a job that felt like that,
Right.
how would I feel when I'm 60?
Is this all there is?
Is this all there is? Am I supposed to get up groggy, slam my coffee to avoid the headache, and then rush out the door to a job that I don't care about?
Right.
Right? Just to be excited by the social medias and the messages and the pictures of naked girls and all this during the workday, and I'm literally trying to distract myself from what I'm supposed to be there to do?
Constant stimulation. Nonstop.
Exactly. So I had to take a look at that. I knew that I was not okay with where my money was going on these senseless purchases that have this law of diminishing returns. Literally, the second you drive it off the lot, it stops making you as happy. And every second after that, every purchase I made, it was the same thing.
Yep.
It didn't matter. I had $8,000 couches.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? They reclined the same as $200 couches.
Real talk.
They had a cup holder. That was about it.
And how much did you actually even use them? Probably because you're working so much.
Right. Exactly.
Isn't that crazy?
It was just for looks, and that was the whole life I had built. And maybe someone can relate to building a life that looks amazing on the surface, but as soon as we start peeling back the layers of the onion, we have no satisfaction.
Jay, I think a lot of people can relate.
You think so?
I do.
I hope so. I hope so, because I've come a long way since then.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing I knew I had to do, well, let me back up. I didn't really know what I had to do to change that, right? There's no secret sauce here. It's a process.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that I did not like the way I felt. So, I wanted to feel better. I don't feel good. How do we get there? So, I started taking inventory of what feelings do I like to feel
There we go.
throughout the day.
Right.
And furthermore, how do I do as much as I possibly can
Mm-hmm.
to feel that way?
Right.
Now, for me, that's been a process in and of itself. In our next episode, we'll get into something called vision boards,
Mm-hmm.
which for me starts with a bunch of things in the middle, the way that I see my ideal life being, the activities on the outside, the work,
Right.
the job, the this, the that. But then I take each of those and I say, why do I want to be doing that? How is that going to make me feel?
Right.
And that produces the feelings. And then, off of those feelings, I can build what activities can I do to kind of spark that.
And what a simple idea. Just do what makes you feel good. But the reality is, it's not that simple. And that's what the vision boards is, one of those things that'll help you get there. But yeah, you made such a profound statement. I just started to realize what made me feel good, and I started to do more of that. But why is that such a difficult thing for us to maintain? And we'll obviously talk about that later, but
The one thing that really stands out in my mind with that is we struggle to make that decision because we have built a life that gives us, whether true, whether a facade, or whether put on, a sense of security.
right,
Society says, get a job,
right,
make money, put some of that away for your future.
Be safe. Be comfortable.
Make the safe choice so that when you're 60 or 70, you don't have to worry about being the greeter at Walmart.
You can live when you're 16, 70, then you can start living. You'll have a retirement.
Right.
You can be free when you're 60 or wait, what?
So, exactly. So this sense of security, which I found to be false only because having a job that I didn't care about resulted in me basically blowing all the money anyway.
Yeah.
So to me, enjoying the work is the only way to produce anything fruitful. That's just my experience.
Mine too.
Okay? But I knew, listen, if I'm going to produce a life that I can be proud of, a life I don't want a vacation from, a life that feels fruitful and accomplishing and I'm satisfied, but I'm always striving for more because I love it and I love my life. That was where I wanted to be. I was like, I want to love my life. How do I love my life? Like, come on.
And that should be inherent. That should be, we're born into that. Why do we have to struggle to get there, right?
It's faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking religion.
Right.
I'm talking faith in the fact that if we do take that risk and build that life that we want, that's going to make us happy, joyous, feeling accomplished or satisfied, whatever you want to put on it, in order to do that, I got to do what I enjoy. Because then I'm going to see whatever fruits come out of that, I'm going to feel a responsibility to utilize that fruit for my betterment and everyone around me.
Right.
Now,
Well said.
last thing I want to say on this, can you imagine what the impact would be in the marketplace, on world peace, etc., if everyone did what they enjoyed? If everyone found the faith to do what they love and then figure out how to monetize on it, just like we used to back before even the industrial age, the merchant days, the bartering,
trading.
everyone contributed something to society for their betterment,
Right.
and that's how the machine went around. What if that was the case today?
First
What
thing that-
impact do
First
you
thing
think?
that comes to my mind is happiness,
Yes. Yes.
joy.
Yes.
Let me even go get bold here and say heaven.
Oh my God.
And that don't want to offend anybody.
What
but
does that mean to
right,
you?
exactly.
What does
That's
that
exactly what I
word
was getting-
mean
yep,
to you?
Right. Well, I mean, to me, heaven is the place where you're happy, joyous, full of bliss. And sometimes maybe we're mistaking that for something after this life, when in reality, why can't we have our own heaven right now? And to flip that, are we living our own hell right now? Is it something for when we die, or is it actually a parable that means what we are in existence right now? And that's a little deep drop right there, but hey, I just wanted to.
I have a thought to piggyback. These lives that people create, that we create, that seem amazing on the surface, right? What's one of the resulting things that happens after that usually? After someone gets a job that pays them well? What do they usually do?
Spend a lot of money.
Spend a lot of money. So, this is what I did. Subscribed to more things on a monthly basis that I did not need and did not bring me happiness or feelings of accomplishment.
Right.
But they made me look cooler. They made me feel cooler or richer or more attractive or whatever.
Upped your status.
Yeah.
Made everyone else think that you're happy and you're doing well.
Right.
I have a nice car. I have expensive things. Look how happy I am.
And then it gets so hard to dig yourself out of that lifestyle.
Yes.
Because now you've built this web of expenses.
Because you don't want to lose what you already have. Once you have say you buy a new BMW or a new Mercedes, right? But now you're strapped to a $600 payment. Uh-oh, things are getting tight. Well, wait, my friends see me have a Mercedes. I don't want to get rid of it now.
No.
What if I get rid of it? What are they going to say? Oh, no, now I just got to figure it out. I'm going to figure out how to make this payment and keep going. Oh, well, I guess I got to keep working on my job because I don't know how else I'm going to do it. And it's just a trap. Like you said, you're digging yourself a hole deeper and deeper, and that just keeps going.
And the more we do that, the more that we think those purchases make a difference.
Right.
And they just don't.
They don't mean anything.
An expense that does make a difference, for example, I just started doing yoga not too long ago.
Yeah.
That makes my mind, body, and spirit feel good. And I'll happily pay that $120 a month.
See, that's amazing. You're investing in yourself at that point.
Yeah.
You know, and spending money on yourself and filling up your own bucket, so to speak, self-love, right, which we'll talk about obviously later in the series. It's everything. But self-love is different for everybody, mind you, and we understand that completely. And for all of our listeners out there, what the point of what we're trying to say is what makes you happy is your right, but be happy. If you can be happy doing whatever you want. If you're happy working at your job and you love what you do and you enjoy 60 hours a week, God bless you.
Yeah.
That's not what we're trying to get at here. We're trying to get at, are you happy?
Right.
Do you enjoy what you're doing? Because
Right.
that's the whole point of this entire podcast, to be honest with you.
It is. And I want to jump in to your story in a minute here. The last thing I want to comment on is relationships.
Ah, yes. Very important.
So growing up, I noticed something about my parents. I love you, Mom and Dad, so don't take this wrong. But I noticed that there are some very considerable fundamental differences between the way that they operate
Mm-hmm.
and what they value. And unfortunately, when the values are that different, it presents obstacles. For example, one person loves watching TV every night, one person wants to be active every night.
Oh, conflict of values?
Conflict of values. Now, I'm all about people having their own thing. I think it's very healthy for two people in a relationship to have their own time when they're not together. I think
Agreed.
that's very healthy for mental health
Right.
and self-assuredness and all that fun stuff. But in selecting someone that we're going to be with, start a family with, there's got to be some real connection there.
100%. And just to drop a little bit of knowledge to kind of set up a future episode, you're right, that's so important. You have to be healed first before you can get into a relationship with somebody. And so many times, and I've been through it, and I'm sure, Jay, you've been through it because we talked about it. How many times you get in a relationship and you try to heal or fix each other. You try to heal while in the relationship. And sometimes it can work, but you've got to be healed yourself.
It's just like there's an old parable. If you have a half of a glass filled with dirty water, is the easiest path to a clean glass of water to fill the other half up with more clean water? Or do you dump out all the bad water and then fill it up?
I love that, man. I've never heard that. That is, wow, what a great analogy.
Fresh.
That's fire, dude. Because you're right. You got to dump out the old water. You can't, because your foundation's already dirty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Synchronicity.
So that is what our first episode is about.
Yes, sir.
It's all about getting rid of the dirty water.
Getting rid of the dirty water. We're questioning everything we know.
Questioning everything we know.
And that's the thing, is that we kind of want to share our stories with you guys because, just so you know, we've all been there. We come from a place of learning, failures, experiences, and we're still working through them, me and Jay, you know. But we wanted to open this podcast to create some kind of active listening where we can not only bring you along our journey, but help you any way we can, as well as help ourselves. Because really, as we're sharing, we're helping everybody and we're helping ourselves, and it's just a great platform. So, yeah, my story, wow, I don't know. So I've never really thought about telling my story. I've never really done it before, you know, but I guess where it all started for me, you know, I come from a family of four. I have 3 younger siblings, a sister and 2 brothers. My childhood growing up was very cookie cutter, very stereotypical. My dad worked at an insurance company, the typical 9 to 5, 9 to 6. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She took care of the kids, so to speak, and she also ran a daycare, so there was a lot of kids in my house at all times. And I guess starting from there, that's kind of where it all started to come together. As a kid, I remember excitement, happiness, things like that, but challenges growing up, and looking back now, you realize how much that has an effect on your current life, and it's very interesting. But yeah, I mean, to dive right into it, I was the kind of stereotypical fat kid, I guess,
Me too.
You too, you too, and I had insecurities. I was very self-conscious of myself in general, and just grew up in a very typical household in the sense on the outside. But then on the inside, it was much different. Unfortunately, my parents definitely had squabbles. They weren't the happiest couple at times. And I think really where it really shifted for me as a kid was when I got my first set of stitches, to be quite honest with you.
Oh.
And that was when my dad headbutted me. And I think up until that point, everything, I knew there was always kind of chaos and tension between my parents, but that's when things really changed for me personally, and it drastically changed the way I thought the rest of my life. And there were good times, but the reason I'm jumping right into this is because I really want to share the struggles I've been through and what's gotten me to this point, and what's made me realize I need to change something when I got older, And really when that happened, it changed everything about who I was. I became a very angry, very quiet, antisocial type of person, to be quite honest with you.
I mean, your own dad headbutts you. What was it for, first of all? How old were you?
I was in junior high, so I believe I was in 9th grade.
What'd you do? Eat the last of the cookies or something?
It was almost something that silly,
Jeez.
But I guess, you got to look at the whole picture. My dad, unfortunately, was an alcoholic, didn't enjoy what he was doing, had a great skill set, but worked a job he didn't enjoy. My parents didn't quite get along. Who knows if they were really meant to be together? Because to be honest with you, I was the accident child.
Yeah.
And I'm the firstborn. My sister is 8 years younger than me.
Wait, we're the exact same. I'm the oldest. My brother's 8 years younger than I am.
Wow.
How did I not know this?
See, synchronicity, which is another topic we'll talk about later. But see, Jay and I have amazing synchronicity, and that's how the universe works. It's just unbelievable.
Oh,
that's awesome, man.
So
Yeah.
great. I'm grateful that we were brought together because
Me too, man.
It just keeps unraveling all the crazy ways we're similar.
Right.
What brings us together?
And so anyways, that happened around 9th grade, and that made me a very introverted person, to be honest with you. I do remember before that happened, I had a lot to say. I was a very energetic child, very vocal. After that, I was very quiet. And I got very insecure, even more than before.
Understandable, because for most kids, the place where we are taught to, and innately, we grow up in a household, we expect, I think, that should be a safe haven.
Yeah.
That should be a place where we can draw strength from.
What a great point,
inspiration
Jay.
from.
You're 100% right.
So, yeah, I'm not surprised that would cause you to make some shifts like that.
Right.
But go ahead.
And so coming up with a kind of a difficult childhood, that is what it is. But some things I realized is that, one thing that really got me into a good place, especially in junior high and high school, was sports. That was everything for me. And that's one thing that my parents, I am very happy for. They made me that you're going to do a sport. You're going to do something active, right?
Were they athletes?
My dad was. Yeah, my dad was an athlete. He played football. He weightlifted. He was a bodybuilder. And I think my mom was too. I just can't remember what sport she played. But they were always, you're going to do a sport. I was always in soccer, baseball. And the reason why that was so important for me is at this stage, when everything happened and with my childhood being kind of on the rocks, it kept me in line and it kept me doing well in school and getting good grades. Because I ended high school with a 4.0, not too bad, right?
That's pretty much killing it.
And I'll tell you right now, if it wasn't for the activities and the sports, I doubt I wouldn't have been able to accomplish that, because I had so much just energy to get out, but it was in a negative way, and sports allowed me to transmute that energy into something positive, Being on a team gives you a family environment feel. A coach is kind of like a mentor, and that allowed me to focus and stay focused with all the chaos going on around me at home.
So maybe a team mentality
Yes.
gave you the family element that was missing.
It did. It did.
Interesting.
100%. And, I grew up in the stereotypical household where my mom was always there emotionally for me, but my dad was the financial provider. So my dad did put a roof over my head. He put food on the table, but he was never there emotionally.
Where are your parents from?
My parents are my dad is from California.
Okay.
And my mom is from, I believe, Illinois, but she's lived out here in Arizona for pretty much majority of her life.
Okay.
And so is my dad at this point.
Okay.
But
very common though, right? Like the generation before us. And just so you know, I'm 34. Cody,
I'm 30.
You're 30. So we are kind of right at the top of the millennials as far as age goes, right?
We're like right in the middle or crossing over on both sides.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And I find that a lot of people, including myself,
Right.
our parents' generation was very much so into that traditional family concept.
Very much so.
Dad,
Very much so.
The father provides and protects.
Correct.
The mother provides emotional support.
Correct.
Okay, go on.
No, you nailed it. That's 100. Like, seriously, that sums up, kind of my household right there,
But frequently, right, because of that, whether it is imposed expectation of society or
Right.
whether the individual places that on themselves or whether simply just the need to provide for the family, whatever it is, that frequently ends up with someone working a job that they're not in love with, right?
Oh, 100%. Just to provide.
What did that cause? What kind of effects did that have on your father, do you think?
Tension, misery, unhappiness, just a very common negative energy.
Negative energy.
Negative energy.
How did that come off? Now, he headbutts you, so that's not very positive.
Yeah,
right?
that's not very positive, right?
What else did that do in his life?
I mean, it just destroyed every relationship he had. It destroyed every dream and goal and vision he wanted for himself. He didn't take care of himself physically. There was just no drive or motivation at that point. It was just like living a daily routine every single day until the day you die. That type of kind of energy.
That's exactly what my dad was like before he got out of the dry cleaning business.
Oh, really?
He spent 30 years in that business.
Wow.
Got stale, right?
Right.
And it wasn't until he switched industries a couple years ago, in fact, into food, something I've been able to help him with. But go on.
Okay. Very interesting.
That's when he stopped becoming that just going through the motions on autopilot mode that so many people get into when we stop taking care of our physical bodies, stop self-love,
Right.
stop proactively trying to nurture our relationships.
Right.
Nothing matters anymore when we're in that zone.
Nothing. It's just it's a self-absorbed kind of mindset, actually.
So you were telling me about your story and how you had began this job at GoDaddy, was it?
GoDaddy, yeah. The first time I was starting to really make some money.
Ooh, getting that loot.
And getting excited about those external things. Buying my first BMW, buying my first house, things like that. Actually, the house came later when I jumped into the mortgage industry. But yeah, I think what we were kind of talking about is that was right at the point where I was starting to make a lot of money and starting to realize after buying things, like you said earlier, why am I still not fulfilled? Why am I still not happy, right? And I think at this time is when I really started to plant the seeds of questioning those things. But it still took years after that for me to really, really immerse myself and figure out what was going on. So yeah, so GoDaddy lasted for a little bit longer, but it started to get very stale. And once it gets stale, the production isn't quite there, the money's not quite there, things start the domino effect occurs, right? And I remember at that time, it was different though, because at that time I had to really step up and help my family financially. So talk about, I can actually understand and put myself in people's shoes as far as parents, because once you're obligated to help someone else, you kind of feel like you have to continue to work that lifestyle, because if you don't know any other way to make money aside from the societal 9 to 5, 9 to 6, you're going to stay there, especially if there's people depending on you financially.
Right.
And that's where I was. It was a very interesting place for me to be in my life, because I was starting to wake up, but now I had more financial obligations and more people to take care of. So I remember at that point, my buddy who worked in the mortgage industry, we stayed in contact. He called me up and he's like, "Bro, you got to come over here. Killer money. You think that money's good at GoDaddy? No, let's make 2-3 times as much as that." And he used to work with me at GoDaddy, so he's like, "You're a great salesman. You're great on the phone. Jump over here." And I'll tell you right off the bat, something inside of me was like there was a hesitation, right? Which, if I was happy, that shouldn't be there. And I'll tell you why. I didn't want to be on the phones anymore. The whole idea, once again, of sitting in a call center and being on the phone talking to multiple people all day, didn't make me happy, but it made me money. So even though I was transitioning to a new career, or the thought of transitioning to a new career where I could make even more money, that should be exciting, right? But there was something there that was just like, tearing at me a little bit. But I did it anyways.
Right.
I did it anyways because, like I said, I have a financial obligation. And hey, if I have to go through this misery, so to speak, I might as well make more money than I am now.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be unhappy, might as well make more money and be unhappy.
True.
Right?
True.
And that's what a lot of people do.
True.
Well, if I'm going to be unhappy, might as well make $1 million because I might as well make more.
Because people don't know that this is possible.
Exactly.
They don't have the slightest knowledge.
And like I was telling you earlier, that all started with college. Everyone telling me to get a certain degree, to go to school for a certain thing. And once you get in the habit of following what other people think make you happy instead of listening to yourself, you just go down this road, you dig a deeper hole, and you get trapped. Because like you were saying, if you're not aware there's something else out there, or if you're not aware that something else is possible, then you're going to continue doing what you're doing.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. And if all we do is utilize the same information that we've always used and the same experiences we've always used, then we're going to continue to get what we've gotten.
Exactly. So, transitioning from there, I jumped in the mortgage industry, got licensed, and honestly, that was pretty exciting at first, because whenever you start something new and there's the new potential of something better, you're going to be juiced up for a little bit. So I remember the first probably 6 months in the mortgage industry, I was like, okay, let's do this. You know what I mean? I studied hard, took my test, got my licensing. I was just, learned the entire mortgage industry, learned how loans work, just obtained all this new knowledge. And right there, I'll stop for a second, because really what was making me happy at that time was growth and learning something new, becoming better, right? It wasn't even the fact that I was about to go make more money in the mortgage industry. It said, oh, I'm challenging myself. I'm learning something new. I'm growing, right? But that only lasted for a little bit. And I did great. I did great. I was making money. But what's funny about this new position in the mortgage industry is it didn't last as long as GoDaddy. Because, like I said, that seed was already planted internally for me that something still wasn't right. So even though I got in the mortgage industry, I did so good on my licensing and test that I won a free laptop, to give you an idea. So I was killing it.
You killed it.
Came out the gate, I was like top rep, you know what I mean? Everyone was like, you're going to be the next, big, I'm not going to throw names out there, but the next big guy that's in the industry at the time, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to try to avoid names and companies just because,
we know.
it's respectful, right? Especially if I have something bad to say about something I'm not going to say.
Keeping it professional.
Keeping it professional. But it's just like almost immediately that same feeling came back, like is this all there is? Like, I get it that I'm making 20 grand a month, but is this all there is? Because I'm spending that now. I'm making it, but I'm spending it, and I'm stuck in a work environment, or I'm stuck in a chair for, 60, 70, and in the mortgage industry, sometimes 80 hours a week. Like, the mortgage industry was more involved than even GoDaddy.
Oh, yeah.
So now my money was higher, but so was my time output. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't getting the input that I wanted for fulfillment, mm-hmm. right? And so, like I said, I bought my first house and everything like that. That was exciting, but it didn't last long. So I did that for a couple years, but just kind of going through the motions, to be honest with you. Doing enough work to pay my bills and keep my job, but not doing enough work to be the top salesman like everyone thought I would be, but also not making the decision to just leave and follow my passion. It's like being stuck in the middle. I had one foot on each side of the fence. And honestly, Jay, that's probably the worst place to be. At least commit to something.
Yes.
And I was in a point in my life where I couldn't fully commit to the mortgage industry, and I fully couldn't commit to taking that leap and doing what I love. So I was stuck in the middle like a zombie. Literally, like a life zombie. Yeah. And I see it all the time. And same thing with your situation, so you start to numb the pain. Mm-hmm. Started to get into a lot of different stimulants, alcohol, cigarettes, Adderall, cocaine, just everything. And everybody around me was doing it too, especially in that industry. It was a very common thing. So
oh yeah, blow everywhere.
Yeah, so it seems like a normal thing. Oh no, we work hard, very hard during the weekend. On the weekend we go crazy. That just was the common, typical. This is life.
The culture.
The culture,
that
exactly.
Whole industry has that culture.
That was the environment I was surrounded by.
High dollar culture.
High dollar culture, constant sales environment, push, push, push. So I did that for a couple years, but I would say that was the biggest transition for me personally in my entire life. Of this entire story I've been telling you guys, that was it. These last couple years in the mortgage industry, I really started to realize, seeing guys make $500K, $400K, $300K around me, me myself making over 6 figures a year easily, but also sitting there being like, I'm not happy. I'm not happy with what I'm putting into my body. I'm not happy with my health. I'm not happy with how much time I'm giving to this company and to these people. I'm just not happy. I'm just doing this.
Yeah.
And that's when things really started to shift for me. And actually, I should take us one step back, because another big thing that happened to me that really launched me into self-awakening and realization was I got a couple DUIs in 1 year. And back to the self-numbing, I got my first DUI, which shouldn't have been one, but this is Arizona. And then that same year, I got my second one. Luckily, my first one got dropped to a reckless driving, so my second one technically only was my first, which I thank God for that, because that would have been bad. That's some serious jail time, no license for a long time. That actually was one of the first things that kind of launched me into self-awareness, because I knew something wasn't going right. I was like, who am I? What kind of person am I? What did I just do, right? And I also realized that it could have been much worse. And little sidebar, the first book I started reading that really changed my whole mindset was called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, or Tolle, like some people say.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of you know that author out there. If you don't, check him out. And that was the first book, I'm not going to lie to you, that I haven't read a book in probably years at that point. And that's a deep book. That was the first book that really got things rolling for me mentally.
What was your biggest takeaway from that book? What was the biggest change that you made due to inspiration found in that book?
Being more present. Stop allowing my happiness to revolve around focusing on some fixated point in the future or some fixated point in the past that's already happened. To be more present. And that really taught me to stay in the moment and realize that I can find happiness within, and I can be happy with where I'm at. The book really taught me that if I'm not happy with where I'm at right now, I will never be happy in the future.
Mm-hmm. And that is a little bit of a teaser for our third episode in this series called Start with an Attitude of Gratitude.
Gratitude's everything.
I say that because frequently, many inspiring pieces that we read, listen to, watch, etc., tell us, and I find this to be true now from experience, that the only way to experience more abundance is to appreciate what we have in front of us.
Not only that, it just changes your whole mindset and your perception and your energy. And the last thing I want to say, because now, going from the mortgage industry 2 years, I'm now in a really good place where I took that leap, and I'm still in the mortgage industry because I love helping people, but I'm doing it on the self-employed side. So now I control my time. I help people the way I want to. There's no one telling me how to do it. And for all the listeners out there, you can take that leap. You can take that chance. It may seem scary, but you have to do it. Get out of your comfort zone. You know what I mean? Environment's everything. You have to control your environment. And the biggest thing I realized when I left that chaotic work environment is that once I got into a more peaceful environment, it's a lot easier to face those challenges and get out of those comfort zones. And that's the biggest thing I learned being where I'm at now.
What were your biggest fears leading up to leaving, and how did you walk through those?
Well, my biggest fear was, am I going to be able to make it? I still have bills to pay. I still have obligations. Am I going to be able to make this work? And what I realized is that's all up to me. I can make anything work that I would like to. I can do anything I want. I just have to believe in myself, and what am I telling myself in my own mind, right? I would say the biggest things that helped me transition from that 9 to 5, 9 to 6 work environment to where I'm at now, one would be back to I feel like I've said it like 5 times now, environment. Without the proper environment around you to cultivate that positive mindset, you're not going to be able to fight, or you're not going to be able to go against something that's challenging you, right? If something's already going to be hard or difficult or challenging to face, then darn it, you better have the right people around you and the right energy and the right environment.
That's right.
Because otherwise it's going to be 10 times more difficult.
That's right. Nobody makes it alone.
Nobody.
Nobody. And the higher up we get, and I don't care what your unit of measurement is for determining someone's success, whether it's free time, whether it's dollars in the bank, whether it's how big their family is. It doesn't matter. Either way, the more success you see, typically, the more teams surround that person.
Guaranteed.
Because it's support.
Right.
I was listening to a podcast called, it's one of my favorites, called The School of Greatness.
That's a good one.
Lewis Howes. I love it. And one guest he had, a Mr. Wilmer Valderrama.
Funny guy.
I love him. His work ethic and everything's so on point. But Lewis asked him, he said, how do you define greatness? And I loved the simplicity in Wilmer's answer. He said, greatness to me is, first of all, knowing your strengths and how to leverage those, but also knowing what are your weaknesses.
Yeah.
Where do you need to fill in strength from others?
Great point.
And that's how he builds his team. Just like a jigsaw puzzle. Everyone has their
piece.
specialty.
Right, their uniqueness.
Yes.
And why try to do it on your own? I mean, you may be able to get far on your own, but why make it harder on yourself?
That's more fun, too. It's more fun when you bring people in.
Exactly. Sharing the struggle and the excitement with other people is part of what life's about.
Something I want to go back to in your story for a real brief moment.
Okay.
You mentioned something about your environment
Yes.
playing a huge part on your success, and
Yes.
I think more specifically you were saying on your ability to make positive improvements in your life.
Yes.
And the mentality or the mindset that you had or have being the catalyst to being able to make those changes. Now, I want to go back to the beginning of your story for a quick second and connect those two.
Okay.
Your parents,
Yes.
your upbringing. Just like mine, I can notice where I have similarities to my dad and where I have similarities to my mother.
Yep.
And which ones of those characteristics are ones that I want and which ones are ones that I don't want.
Right, right. We
Right.
can pick and choose. You're allowed to do that.
Right? And even though my parents did the best they could,
Right, exactly.
now being years later and mature and having done all this research and work on myself every day, it's ongoing practice, full of daily tasks and routines, which we will get into in this series. My point is that the parents put their impressions on us at a very young age,
Yep.
showed us what seemed to be like the truths.
The truth to them. Yeah.
To them.
To them.
And that to me goes back to something you also said, which is, what story do we tell ourselves?
Right.
What do we believe is possible?
Right.
So I want to ask you this. How did you start to make that transition from what was imprinted on you as a child to then, once you realized that you wanted your life to be different from the inside out, how did you begin to arm yourself with the knowledge, the wherewithal, and the strength and dignity to overcome those obstacles and start to heal and start to make that internal progress?
Great question, Jay, because that's huge. Okay, let me give you an analogy. Just on like Facebook or Instagram, right? What do? We follow who we want. We don't follow who we don't want, right? So we basically make sure that whatever we're seeing on our news feed is what we want to see on a daily basis, right?
Yes.
If someone's posting negative stuff, you're like, well, I'm not gonna follow that dude, like or that gal or whatever.
Unfollow.
It's just like life. I started to do a check on what I was allowing into my mental space. The way I was doing that, and it actually really did help at the time when I bought my house, because then it was my house, and I had my brothers living with me at the time, but they're kids, they're good. I'm the leader, and I made sure to set the tone and the environment in that household. So the first thing that I would say to answer your question is, I set the tone around me from the moment I wake up to the moment I get home.
Boom.
I made sure that my house was a house of Zen. If I had some crazy, because at the time, remember, I was still working in the mortgage industry, but what I made sure of is that when I leave work and I go home, that's my place of solace, peace, and harmony. You have to have that. For everyone listening out there, because I've been there, if you don't have a place at the moment to where you can go and just collect your thoughts and be alone and be at peace, you need to find that immediately, because you are going to struggle. I'm just being honest, and that's my opinion. So the first thing I did is I set my tone, set my environment for where I was living. I wake up in the morning, I had things on the wall, I would play whatever motivational music I wanted to play. I created an environment where I could choose what I wanted with no one telling me anything other than that.
Beautiful.
The other thing I started to do was have checks and balances on who I was surrounding myself with. And as much as I love some of my old school friends, and as much as I love some of the people I grew up with, I had to really decide on a good number of them on who I wanted to keep close relationships with and who I didn't. And it was nothing personal. My love is still there for those people. But I realized that from where I was going in life, I outgrew the environment they were providing. And so to answer your question even further, or in the second part to it, I really started to check in on who I was surrounding myself with and who I was letting into my personal space.
There's so much power in that, because you're absolutely right. And for all of our friends out there listening, something that I know I believe very strongly, that I know you believe very strongly too, is the importance of energy.
Yes.
And vibes.
Right.
And intentions.
Yes.
So, how impactful to have made that realization that anybody or anything that gets in my circle, in my universe, better come correct.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it has no place being near my energy.
And just listen to your guidance system. Back to what you said earlier in the podcast, and in this episode, listen to what makes you feel good. If there's somebody in your circle that every time they come around you, you get a knot in your stomach or you feel anxiety, then you need to separate yourself from that person. If not forever, just temporarily maybe. But listen to yourself. I think that's, now that I think about it, that's probably the biggest takeaway or the biggest thing that helped me is I started to listen to myself. But also I started to gain more knowledge because a lot of times when you start to waking up, you don't know where to go. And how do you figure that out? Read books. I started to read a lot more books. I started to listen to a lot more influencers. Tony Robbins, Gary Vee, Eric Thomas, Lewis Brown, or
House?
Lewis House, I'm sorry. And I was thinking of somebody else, something Brown. But point is instead of watching YouTube and sports and ESPN, I started to watch motivational videos. I started to read books that taught me how the mind worked, how psychology worked, how emotions worked, how my emotions worked. And so that honestly helped me a ton as well.
That's beautiful. And I believe that many influencers would say something very similar.
If you look back at a lot of their stories, they are very similar. They all have consistencies and patterns.
Yeah. And I believe, going back to the energy piece, I believe that whatever we contribute to this world, a little piece of our energy goes into it.
Yeah, yeah.
So for those influencers, they sat down and they poured their hard-earned experience and their wisdom into those pages, and then by reading that, we get a little piece of that.
Guaranteed. Energy's never lost or created, it's just transferred.
Transferred. Oh, preach. That's beautiful. Cody, I've super enjoyed listening to your story, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. It was tough. Sometimes telling your story isn't as easy as you think it will be.
No, that's 100% true. And that just goes back to too, like a piece of that is, hey, my story is what it is. But
well said.
But all these people are listening.
Right. Everyone's got their own story.
How's it gonna sound, right?
Right.
We all get those thoughts.
Thanks for saying that, Jay, because you're right. Sometimes the biggest concern is you worry about what people think of your story, but everyone's starts somewhere.
Yes.
Meaning when we're kids.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own story. Don't be afraid of your story. That makes you who you are. That makes you where you are now today. Everything you've been through has put you to the point you are right now. And if you're listening to this podcast, honestly, you're probably working on yourself. Because I don't think you're going to find this series if you're not working on yourself. Law of attraction, synchronicity. I think that if you're drawn and you're listening to this podcast and you're still with us at the end of the episode, you're at a place where everything you've gone through has put you right where you're supposed to be. Now it's time to just skyrocket up.
That's absolutely right. And with emptying out that old glass of dirty water, we're just going to sit here with you guys and we're going to fill up our glass with just a little bit of clean water in each of these episodes. And by the end of this series, we can all sit back, relax, and take a nice swig.
I like that.
Till next time.
Real talk.